Hello and welcome to the notebook Start Coding in Python in 20 minutes. So to start with, in order to access this notebook, you can go to GitHub link in the description or eventually go to collab.research.google.com if you want to create a new notebook. To start with, I prepared intro chapter with bunch of GIFs that tell you how to do basic things in terms of navigation. To create a code or text cell, you can click these buttons and you will have code cell that looks like this and text cell that looks like this. If you have multiple code cells, what you might want to do is check if all of them run properly. To do that, you click on Run All button or Runtime Run All, and here you go. Next, you have sidebar that mostly in this case I rely on the table of contents that gives you all of the chapters and subchapters, as well as files that tell you what kind of files you have in the runtime. And lastly, there is a cheat sheet that tell you how to create a Boolean parameter, the date parameter, and so on, that will help you test your functions quickly and nicely. Let's start with the most basic Python statement, which is print. To test it out, you just type print, open the quotes, and type hello. So you need to remember that this statement just returns hello, as you asked Python, and also if you want to type text, you need to use quotes, either double or single. Your choice. For now, it doesn't matter that much. Alright, so how can we use print statement? So let's imagine I don't have calculator at home and want to see 2 plus 2 times 2. I got 6, which means Python can also be used as a calculator using basic print statement. Let's combine this thing with this. So let's imagine what happens if I want to do 2 plus 2, once again, but 2 will be treated in quotes. I got 22. This is information for you that, as red color suggests, these are strings or texts. So texts cannot be added, so they need to be joined together, and eventually you got 2 alongside another 2, resulting in 22. So to sum up, how can we also see that from Python's eyes? We can do print2 and print2 in quotes, but with additional type statement. So this tells me that first thing is integer and second is string. So these are completely different things for Python. Let's move on to creating some variables, which are just boxes that hold some values. So let me create a list first. So to create a variable, I need to call some name of the variable. For now, let's do variable. I need to do equal character to let know what will be assigned to variable. And let's, in the square brackets, do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And also print variable and print type variable. Here you go. I got the same thing printed and information from Python that this is the type list. So to move on from list to creating a tuples, I can copy paste this code, and there is only one thing I need to change, which is replacing the square brackets with round brackets, and I get a class tuple. Very easy, right? So to make the things not as easy for everything, let's move on to dict. And here there is a slightly bit more complication, because to create a dictionary, I need to go into curly braces. But also in between commas, I cannot pass just one value, but a set of key and value pairs. So what I can do is I can do, for example, A being 1, B being 2, C being 3, and D being 4. Let's run it. So I have a dictionary that has keys A, B, C, and D, and values being 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is a dictionary. Another very important Python data type is Boolean. So let's create a one. So we can create called flag, and it will be true. Let's also print it and print the type. So basically Boolean is a data type that can be true or false. And when you call type on this variable, it returns you bool. So what can we use it for? We can ask Python if 5 equals 2 plus 2. Right? It failed. So this is the first time code cell failed, and the reason being is that we used 1 equal sign instead of 2. 1 is for assignment, and here we are not assigning. We want to compare left side with the right side. So to fix it, we need to use two equal characters, and eventually we get false properly. So other examples, what we can do is that we can do 4 equals to 2 plus 2. It's correct. But also one important thing to remember and to keep some intuition is that true doesn't equal to true. And also you can see that from color. But the reason is not that it's different color, but it's just different type. Here is Boolean and here is a string. Next chapter is about functions, and the function is one of the coolest thing in programming at all. So to show this to you on practice, let's define very basic function. So to define a function, we need a def, standing for define keyword, and let's do some function v1. So this is the name of my function. Then I open the brackets and pass the function arguments. So I will pass into my function number 1 and number 2, and then I add semicolon to enter the function body. My first function, what it will do is it will print sum of number 1 plus number 2. The second function, on the other hand, what it will do is will do pretty similar thing, but instead of printing, it will return it to me. Alright? So here are our function definitions, and what I want to do now is I would like to call these functions with different arguments. So first function will be called with argument 1 and 2 as number 1 and number 2 respectively, and second function will be called with 1 and 3. Let's run it. And what you can see is that first function returned 3 because 1 plus 2, and second function returned 1 plus 3, which is 4. So theoretically, right now you don't see any difference, but when I will show you how to assign these values, you will clearly see that there is something going on here. Alright, so let's do the following. I will copy these functions and we'll do outputs v1. So this is the assignment. So I am assigning output of this function to outputs v1, and to outputs v2 I will do the following. Okay, and let's print outputs v1 and outputs v2. So what happened right now is we had additional none. Why? The reason being is that first of all we print outputs v1. To produce outputs v1 we call this function. What this function does in its body, it prints 1 plus 2, which is 3. On the other hand, it doesn't have any return statement, so it returns none. And none is passed as outputs v1 value, which is then printed, so we print none. On the other hand, when it comes to some function v2, we don't print anything, but this function returns 1 and 3, which is 4, being fed to a variable called outputs v2, which content is then printed, so we arrive at 4. Chapter covers if statements. So let's create an if statement, and we will use it within a function that will check if a number is even or not. So how to build such function? Remember, we need def keyword, and let's call it is even. And we will accept one number as an argument. So to create an if statement, we need if, no surprise, and let's see if number is divisible by 2 without any remainder value. So we want to check if we divide the number by 2 and it will return some value and no remainder. This is the operator that does that. So if the number is divisible by 2 and returns 0 as a remainder, we want to return true. Else, if this doesn't happen, we want to return false. Alright, and let's test our function. So let's print output of is even 2 and is even 3. So we want to see true and false respectively, and this is what actually happened. Now let's cover for loops. So for loop is a type of loop that allows you to go through every element in particular collection. Let's start with an example. So remember we had recently created a variable that is a basic list. So let's see how it looks like. A list of 4 numbers. What we can do is for every single element, let's call it some number in some list, what we can do is we can print some number squared. And as you can see, I go through every element of this list, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and do 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, and 4 squared. If we want to do a for loop for a tuple, we can just update our variable with particular braces and do some tuple here. The outputs will be exactly the same because we have the same elements in our collection. But what happens in a dictionary scenario? So remember we had such a dictionary in previous chapters, and if we want to do some dict here, it's not that easy. Why? Because dictionary consists of keys and values, and basically when we do for loop on a dictionary, it calls only keys. And if I do a squared, it doesn't return anything because just text cannot be squared. There is no logic behind that. So what we can do is we can call some dict.items, and we know that items of dictionary are keys, which are letters, some letter and some number, so that at the moment we will unpack letter number and use a number to be squared. To test, we can also do things like this. And as you can see, I have A, B, C, D, so we iterated through all of the letters and all of the numbers, and they were also squared. The next thing on our agenda is a while loop. So while loop is a special type of loop which is executed until some condition is met. To give you an example, let's create a variable called I which is equal to 10. And let's create a while loop which starts with the while keyword. And let's execute this loop until I is greater than 0. And semicolon. So what we want to do in this loop? We want to print I squared, why not? And if we do print the output, what we'll do is we'll decrease I by 1. And to do that, there is a very nice operator which is minus equals 1. So we will do 10 squared, decrease it by 1, then we'll have 9, it will be still greater than 0, so we will print once again and execute it all over again. So as you can see, the last step was when I was equal to 1. So we printed 1 squared, it got 1. Then we got decreased 1 to 0, and it was already breaking this condition, so this loop stopped execution. Let's now cover sorted and enumerate functions in Python. So to give you an example, when we call sorted, and what we can do is open the quotes, let's go through all of the keys on our keyboard that have letters and see what happens. So let me do from Q to P, A to L, and Z to M. Run the code cell and look. Python did sort all of the letters for us. So you don't need to do that manually, you can just call sorted. You can also call for letter inserted. You can just print this letter, right? And then you will have like for statement that prints all of the letters. But let's imagine what if I would like to see also index, to know like what is the 20th letter in the alphabet. So what I can do is I can use enumerate. So if I apply enumerate on some collection, it allows me to access the index being a thing being enumerated. So if I do the following, I have a nice list of alphabetically sorted letters with information which letter it is in the order. So 20th element, as I suggested in the beginning, is the letter U. In the previous chapter we used sorted and enumerate to form nice sorted list of letters. What we can right now reuse it for is to create a dictionary and also create a dictionary via comprehension. So comprehension is an advanced programming thing that allows you to build dictionaries, tuples, or lists or other data types in Python with just one line of code. So let's remove this print statement And as we are iterating through index and letter in enumerated sorted collection of letters, what we can also do is build a dictionary. So to build a dictionary, we need curly braces, as you can see right now. And what we can do is define key to be the index. So every single number will be the key of a dictionary, and it will be mapped to a value which will be a letter. Let's call it some dict, and let's print it. So as you can see, I have beautiful dictionary with numbers and letters side by side. And how can I use it for is I can call SomeDict and return, let's say, 22nd element, why not? And right now I know that 22nd element in the alphabet is the letter W. The next thing to be covered in this tutorial are imports. So to show you an example, what I can do, the most basic import that we can do is to import from a library called string a module called ASCII letters. So if I print ASCII letters, what you can see is I have already available list of alphabetically sorted lowercase and uppercase letters without building any code. So this is what the imports are for. You can reuse libraries available in the Python repository without reinventing the wheel on your own. Let's now do a deep dive about processing text files. So in order to create a text file in your runtime, we will just showcase it in the Files tab, we can use the write file magic. So what it does, it converts the text you write here into a text file called inputfile.txt. So when I click this and reload my runtime, what I can see is that I have inputfile.txt available. To open it in Python, I need to do the following. I need to use with keyword, which is a bit advanced, so it will be not the scope of this tutorial. With open, and I need to pass the path to my file, so it's called inputfile.txt as file. What I can do then is I can create a variable called contents and do file.read. When I print the contents afterwards, I get a nice text. Then I want to apply some cleanup on it. And what happens is I want to remove new line characters. There's the first thing. Secondly, I want to get rid of uppercase characters, as you can see here, and remove the dots. So let's imagine I want to convert the string into list of the words and count how many words I do have in this text. So first of all, to do cleanups of the unnecessary characters, we can do contents.replace. And what we want to replace first is to replace the new line character with empty string. Okay? And afterwards, when we have done that, we can also replace a dot with empty string as well. Let's print the contents afterwards. As you can see, new line character is gone, there are no dots. To get rid of uppercase letters, what we can do is we can call contents.lower. Let's print contents afterwards. And as you can see, we have nice text that has only lowercase letters with no new lines and dots. And finally, to convert it into a list, we can do contents equals to contents split. And to split the text, we can split it by just space. So we'll have this is a basic and so on. Let's do this and print contents. Here we go. Here we have a list. So what we can also do is we can print length of contents. This is a new keyword in Python that tells you how long particular collection is. So we have 42 letters, not letters, but words in the string or the text we have just created. And how to evaluate how many unique words do we have. This is very interesting because here you can see we have, for example, text being here and here, right? So a very nice shortcut to do that is we can do len of contents, but also we can wrap contents with set. So what happens is that set gets list as input and converts it to a separate Python type called set, which by its definition has to have only unique elements. So we can see in terms of unique words, we have 36 of them and 42 in total. Now let's do a deep dive into breakpoints. So breakpoint is a very useful statement that will help you debug loops or functions and quickly spot when is the issue in your code. So in this chapter we will understand why Ninja chefs launch junk quesadillas at customers. Sounds funny? We will understand quickly why you should remember this sentence. Alright, so let's reuse the code we have from previous chapter. So we have a while loop that starts from 10, prints the square value and decreases the number by 1. Alright, here you go. So let's add two breakpoints. So I will add breakpoint in the beginning of while loop and after decrease of the number. So my goal is to stop execution at the code to allow me to inspect what is happening under the hood while the while loop is executing. So if I run this code cell, it will not succeed because it will keep executing unless I want it. So the reason why you have this funny sentence here is that first uppercase letters will be a helpful reminder like what can you do with a breakpoint. So let's start with N for Ninja. So as you can see, your code is currently executing or about to execute the line number 8. So if I do N, I have line number 9. Then so on, so on, so on. And as I already finished my first iteration, I can print I and I can see it's 9. So if I do additional 4 rounds and I print I have 8. So I completed another loop within while loop. So this is N. Let's see next. So I have chefs for C and C stands for continue. So while before we jumped line by line, I can just jump between first breakpoint and second breakpoint. So if I do here, I print I, it's 8. And if I do here, I already executed this breakpoint. So please note that currently I have highlighted this line for me, which is line 6. And the reason being is I am at this breakpoint. So I am about to access this line. So if I go like this, I go to I, and it's already 7. So if I do C twice, I get 6, and so on. So next letter we have from our nice sentence is L for lunch. So when I do L, what happens is nothing special because this function is quite short, but it just tells me what is the code around my current line that is being breakpointed. Alright, and then we have J, which I will show you in a second what is it for, but the last word with uppercase is quesadillas and Q stands for quit. So right now we quitted the breakpointing and we learned some new cool stuff. And one last thing in this chapter is J, which stands for jump. So what might sometimes happen is that we might have some bad line of code, which is like this, in which we are trying to add string to integer. Okay, so let's run it. And as you can see, we are currently at line 8. We can execute it. And then we are about to do this faulty line of code. So we can eventually jump to line 10 and ignore this line and just proceed with next lines. But if we don't do that, if we just click on continue, we will have error. And as you can see, we just tried to add integer to string, which is not possible in Python. One of the last chapters I would like to cover with you in this tutorial is fstrings. So in this code cell I prepared some parameters you can tweak on your own, and in order to learn different sorts of parameters like dates or sliders and so on, you can revisit in intro. There is one GIF I prepared that shows you different examples here. So how can we use fstrings? So for example, let's imagine I want to print sum of two values and what I can do is I can do F. So I precede my string with F, which stands for formatting. So I am formatting the string and I use curly braces with, let's say, 50 plus 10. Alright, I print it and I got 60. But what I can also do is I can do print f string sum of two values, and I can do number 1 plus number 2. And let's hide my code cell by double clicking. And as you can see, I have the same outputs, sum of two values being 60. But if I do 1, 2, 3, 4 time plus 4, 5, 6, 7, look, so the first print statement is still executing 50 plus 10, but the second print statement is relying on what the user passes as number 1 and number 2. So depending which values I use here, if I do 1 and minus 12, I get this value updated. So I have a nice calculator that does addition. I can easily extend it with any mathematical operation. The last thing I would like to cover with you in this tutorial are asserts. So asserts are a very helpful thing that can build some logic into your function, code, or anything. That can be like a guard that will protect you from code failure, or eventually log you a message that will be like very useful to navigate where the issue of the code is. So let's right now imagine from the previous example, I want to build a logic that will make sure number 2 is always greater than number 1. So I can use assert, set a condition I would like to be always met, like this, and also print some message. So I can do, this message will, by the way, pop up when this condition is violated. So if I do number 2 is not greater than number 1, I can also wrap it like this. Number 2, semicolon, number 2 is not greater than number 1, semicolon, number 1. Let's run it. It does work properly because 50 is greater than 30. But if I do 10, what happens is I got assertion error, and the code told me the issue is that number 2, which is 10, is not greater than number 1, which is 30. So this is a very nice tool that already tells me where my code is failing and why it is failing.